Hey guys, welcome to Birds of a Feather, episode 5. I have titled this Howie Hero for very obvious reasons, which we will definitely be discussing very shortly. Um, I am your host, Michael Chromiak, Chrome. I am here once again, with our buddy Charles Chucks Moranin. Charles, we're winding down on YouTube, buddy.
Hey, well, it's not so much of a bad idea or a bad thing. We got we got this show, and then next week will be our last one before we head to ATD. So it's gonna be good.
Yeah, it seems like that's going to be more than likely the last show. Um, Barring any kind of a week or so setback. But I think we were targeting November 14th as a start date there. We're going to appear again on AM and the PM with Tom and Mike one more time next week, Wednesday, 1 week from today. So please make sure you guys check that out. And obviously, Charles, we know, well, first of all, I'm not wearing my Eagles garb because it is the best two words in sports are what? Game 7.
Game 7.
So it's Game 7 of the World Series. I'm not a huge Astros fan. My dad likes the Astros, but my two favorite players play for the Astros. So plus, as a Sixers fan, the way that they built their team is really the original model of what teams like the Sixers and a lot of these other teams did, telling their fan base we're going to stink for 6 years and then just build assets. So I want them to win to prove that it actually works. So with that, though, obviously Game 7 tonight. If you're watching it, enjoy it. It's going to be it's been an amazing series. I'm just going to mention it because it is definitely the number one news of the week. Was the trade that we went out and got Jay Ajayi. Huge trade. We're going to get into that momentarily, but I know we were going to do a very quick recap of the game this week against the San Francisco 49ers. Obviously, huge win for the Eagles. I don't think there was really any surprises. We knew that the Eagles were going to pretty handily take that game over. So with that, Charles, why don't you give us your rundown and how you saw this game?
Okay, well, first I just want to say, like, if you guys noticed something, I got headphones in. Can you guys hear me well still? Okay,
It was actually better. Yeah, that was good.
Okay, all right. So yeah, I'm doing this for audio purposes because I always have a little bit of an issue hearing Chrome well. So I put these in as a trial, see how they work, and so far I can hear Chrome a lot better than weeks prior.
You're muffling, and I think you have your microphone behind your head.
Do I? All right.
That little tab behind your right ear.
Sorry.
That's the microphone.
So again, so this is like a trial basis. Can you hear me better? No. No. I might have to just ditch the Bluetooth. Is it still really muffled?
It's like you have your hand over it.
All right. How about now? All right. Chrome, why don't you give your? Let me get set up from the. Let me fix this. I'll get rid of the Bluetooth headset. But while I take like a minute to do that, why don't you give your quick input and then I'll chime in.
Yeah, I mean, I thought it was another dominant game by the defense. They looked very strong. Carson again, another strong game. A few little things that I definitely wanted to take note was obviously the hit by Fletcher Cox. That was considered a questionable hit. I thought everything was fine on Joe Staley, which, by the way, if anybody wanted Staley, this week was not a convincing week. This would have been a good time for him to show what his trade value would have been to this team. And I thought that he was very underwhelming in his appearance against the Eagles. But we had guys step up. You called it. Alshon Jeffrey definitely stepped up this week. He did a really nice job, making some plays, which is what we've been waiting for. He looked like a number one receiver this week. But I thought everything was good. I thought, the offensive line looked strong. I'm going to let you dig into Big V a little bit more. But overall, I mean, I thought he had a decent game. The kid's learning on the fly, really. He's thrown in. And, he's also – I don't know what kind of pressure he could be if he is feeling. But, I'm sure he's not deaf and he can hear that he's getting a lot of questions and flack from the people in the city who don't believe in this kid. But I thought he looked strong. I think he is more than a comparable replacement at this point. And I think that he'll continue to just build on what we've seen so far. You're muted.
Geez, I'm not off to a good start today, am I?
There you go.
Sorry, I'm really excited for today's podcast.
I'll talk louder so you can hear me better.
Okay. No, actually, your audio is a lot better now, so you don't have to. You're good. So to relay off that, I thought Big V. Well, I didn't really think. I actually, it's a lot of scouts and analysts who have really looked at the game tape and studied it over, looked it over. Brian Baldinger and people that I follow on Twitter and paid close attention to, they also say that Big V played a very solid game. There were some snaps where he gave up a sack. There was that the one time where he who was he going up against? Solomon? No, it wasn't Solomon Thomas. It was the backup right end for the 49ers. I can't remember his name, but he beat Big V with a power move to the inside and give up a sack. But you could argue also that a lot of the reason that sack happened was because Wentz held onto the ball too long. So it's not that totally wasn't on Big V. There are other plays. I know that one holding call that he had on the big run that got called back. But if you look at the tape again, he really didn't hold it. It's a very iffy call by the ref. The ref probably saw the defender get pushed down and figured, okay, like it looked pretty bad, so as a hold. But if you look at it, Big Free had good technique. His arms were within the shoulder pads, and he was pushing forward, and he just drove his guy to the ground, and it looked bad. But if you just look at his technique, it was fine. He wasn't really holding. I think Brian Baldinger pointed that out. It was just a good play, and sometimes when you're that good, it makes the refs kind of question the hold. So that wasn't that call was undeserved. So it made Big V look worse than he was. So that whole narrative coming out of this game where that Big V had a bad game, that's not true at all. He had a very solid game. The issues on the O-line where the 49ers were getting a lot of pressure was more so on the interior. The interior of the line was just pushing the Eagles back a lot. So I don't think that people should really be too concerned just yet about Big V. I think he's fine. The interior of the
but Big V's going to be the guy that's going to get all the flack.
Because he's the one
just
coming
how the city is.
Yeah, and honestly, you just have to if you're a reasonable fan and you really look at the game and how they really play, you don't just jump to conclusions based right off the surface of it. It's this O line was struggling earlier on, but as the game went on, like I think late third quarter and the fourth quarter, they reasserted their dominance, and luckily the defense stepped up. They played really, really, really well, and that's an understatement. I'm surprised C.J. Beathard is still alive. Like he practically got killed. He was getting hit on every play. I forget how many sacks they had. The defensive line was all over, dominating the 49ers offensive line. The run defense again, elite. Our corners were playing great on the back end, not falling for double moves and anything, and that was evident on Jalen Mills' pick six. So just really not much to say. It was a dominant game, even though it was kind of an ugly game for the offense. You're gonna have these games where it's not always one side of the ball is not always gonna be at its playing at tip top shape. But that's what's so good about having a balanced team is when one unit is struggling, the other side can step up, and that's what happened this game. It was still a great win, dominating win. I was actually pretty close. My prediction was 36-13, and it was the final score was what 33-10 or something like that. Yeah. So it was again dominant win. I don't have any complaints. It's more of just that it was ugly, but hey, we did our business. Time to move forward.
Yeah. So again, another big win for the Eagles, 7-1. Obviously, leading the NFC East and leading the NFC in general. And we gained another game, obviously, on Washington, who had Dallas to contend with this week. Speaking of Dallas, let's jump to that. Let's knock that one out of the way too. Obviously, Ezekiel Elliott finally, after weeks and weeks and weeks, and this side and that side and this side and that side, we finally know that he's going to be sitting out the next 6 games. Everything with the arbitrator went through. They reinstated his ban, and then his appeal was declined or denied. So with that, just to run down the games, you have them listed playing, the games that he's going to miss, including they're going to have the bye week, I think, in there too. Kansas City, tough matchup not having him there. Let's do this. I'll read the game off, and we don't even need to get into crazy. Just right away, your thoughts with Zeke win, without Zeke win or loss. All right? So let's go. Kansas City with Zeke. Did you have that as a win or a loss?
Loss.
Okay. I actually had it as a win. Just because I'm not sure how Kansas City's still great, but they've shown a few cracks as of late. Without him,
obviously loss.
And I would agree. I think that's going to be a huge hit for them. Atlanta.
With him, win.
Without him,
it's going to be close. I think the way that Atlanta's offense is struggling right now, I'll give them that. I'll say that's still a win in Atlanta.
Yeah, I think it's a tough game, but I still think they're going to come out with that win. Philadelphia.
With Zeke, I actually surprisingly with Zeke I had the Cowboys winning that one.
Me too. That's all right. Me too. I think that was going to be, even if we ran the next game, if we won next game and then we had the bye week, I thought that was coming out of that we were going to lose that game. So I agree with you. Now, without him,
I think we win that one now. I think it's with the bye week. It's just I don't see how the Cowboys adjust quickly enough to beat us, even if it's at Dallas.
I agree. I think it's going to be a really difficult matchup for them, specifically even now with the addition that we have. It's going to make it much more difficult for their defense, I think, to get to the quarterback. I think they're having a tough time getting the running game going. Chargers, Thanksgiving.
With him, win. Without him, I'm going to say a loss.
Yeah, I think it's a win.
Because here's the thing. The Chargers, if you had told me, if you had asked me this question weeks ago, I would have said Dallas won either way. But the Chargers have been coming on lately, and they're the team that I personally they were one of my teams that I thought were going to win the division because of their offense and improved defense. And I think their offense is starting to click more and more. You're starting to get more explosive plays out of Travis Benjamin. Melvin Gordon's still there doing his thing. Philip Rivers is still Philip Rivers. I think that defense is still very underrated. So, people are sleeping on the Chargers because of their horrific start. But I think Thanksgiving, without Zeke, they're not going to expect the Chargers to come in and be the kind of threat they are. But honestly, I think the Chargers are legit. So I have that as a loss for the Cowboys.
Washington,
I think that would be a loss.
So I actually had, to go back, I had the Chargers as a win. But you make some valid points that may sway me a little bit. I think it's going to be a much better matchup than I thought. Washington, I had loss. I think, especially coming out of this week's game, I think Washington would have made the adjustments and it made it a really good game. It would be a tough game, but every divisional game is, and the majority of the time the games are split. So I actually, either way, I think I had Washington winning this game.
Gotcha. No, I can't really argue with that. It's divisional opponents, like because the Washington. The thing is, when they played them this past week, Washington was just banged up. I can only assume in what is that 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 weeks that Washington's going to get a little bit healthier than they are now. I don't know how many pieces they're exactly going to get back, but I do think that they will be healthier. And with this division, it's always hard to sweep. It really is. So with the Cowboys winning, you kind of have to feel like Washington's going to come in wanting to get one back on them. So I do think that either way it would have been a loss.
Right. Yeah. And with the Giants, I have loss and loss. Or I'm sorry, win and win. I don't think there's any question to me win and win.
Same for me. I think the Cowboys win that regardless of having Zeke or not.
So if I'm looking at this, I'm seeing at least 2 games that maybe 3. 2 or 3 games that I think would have been sure wins for them that I'm now swayed losing Zeke.
Yeah.
I think they're going to have a very difficult road after this because of the hot start that we had. I'm almost like concerned for the bye week for us just because we're playing so well. But then, I mean, you got to rest guys. But, man, like it's just you see the momentum is continuing to roll on, and I almost am scared for us to have a bye week. But I don't think this is a team that's going to get complacent in any way.
I don't. Just to rally off, like piggyback off of that. I don't see them as a team that's going to get complacent because of leadership. I think guys like Blunt knows what it takes to not get into that lull from a bye week like they did last year, and I think this success that they've had going into the bye week is more sustained than it was last year. Last year they were riding high; people didn't know what to expect. This is a more sustained success that I think a bye week isn't really going to interfere with, and also consider the fact that Darby's going to be coming back after the bye week most likely, and with Ajayi, which we'll get into a bit, but Ajayi is probably going to have now that'll make 2 weeks worth of studying the playbook. He'll probably be in full rotation by then, so the bye week comes at a good time so that Ajayi can come in and have some time, no pressure to learn the playbook, get assimilated to the offense.
Yeah, no, I agree. So for me, I mean, really going forward, for Dallas to be able to just keep pace. I agree with what I know you're going to talk about. This is the proving time for Dak. But even that aside, I think this is the time for that offensive line to show that they're still the offensive line that everybody thought they were for years. Sorry about the music again. They're the offensive line that they thought that everybody has stated they are for years. You got Darren McFadden and Alfred Morris running the football, 2 aged running backs. And, I know he's a Cowboy. I always liked Alfred Morris, but I just don't see them 2 being enough at this point to even compensate for the loss of Zeke. So if that's going to happen, this offensive line for the Cowboys needs to step up and create some holes for these guys. I don't see the explosiveness. I mean, I do see Darren McFadden as a guy who can carry a few guys on his back and break a few tackles maybe, but he's a big, built, bulky guy. But I don't see it happening. If it's going to happen, though, that's what they're going to need. And Dak's going to need to use his feet, create plays, and I think that, guys like Dez, I think Dez has lost a few steps over the last couple of years. I think he's starting to show his age. He's going to need to find the fountain of youth over the next, what's today, Wednesday, over the next 3 or 4 days. Because somebody's got to step up other than Dak. Dak can't do it himself. I think they're going to need a playmaker because Zeke is their playmaker. I don't care what anybody says about Dez. Dez is now hitting those years where he's the second thought or the afterthought. But one of these guys needs to step up, and other than Jason Witten, who does make plays, but somebody needs to step up and give Dak a weapon to target.
I agree, and I was listening to the Power Ranking show on NFL Network. Is there an echo? Because I kind of hear an echo.
I don't hear.
Never mind. Again, technical issues on my end today. Sorry, I apologize. But anyway, I think that there is a lot of concern. Not, and you have to be aware that this narrative that you're hearing from us Eagles fans, it's not the wise Eagles fans aren't just saying like Dax, the Cowboys are in trouble with that Zeke. It's not just us. It's nationally. It's media. Elliot Harrison, who works for NFL Network, and he does the power rankings. He's on the power rankings show with MJD and Colleen Wolfe. He's the one that writes the power rankings, and he today when I was listening to it on YouTube, he's come out. He's a Cowboys fan, guys, but he's flat out saying that he doesn't think Dak is the type of person who can carry this team the way they need him to right now. I don't want to go that far because I still think Dak is really good, so I don't want to fully down him. But at the same time, it's a big concern, and it's not just because of Dak and his ability, but because, like you said, Dez is not the same. I think I've heard Cowboys fans even saying that. So that goes without saying anymore. He's not elite anymore. He's not a top 10 wide receiver. Cole Beasley isn't having the same type of year. Butler and Terrence Williams, they're just pieces. They're nothing special. So, and Jason Witten is Jason Witten. I said before on here that he's smart with his age. He's wise and he knows savvy ways to get open, but he's not athletically where he was before. So it's going to be tough for Dak to really pull out the type of offense or the amount of offense to get going, especially if this defense, the secondary, keeps getting torched. The pass rush I said is improving, and that's correct, but hasn't stopped that defense, that secondary, from getting exposed by good offenses. So it's a concern. I think if I go back, I had them going 2-4 without Zeke, and that's trouble for the Cowboys. So we'll see. I think that it's something to really look at for, and it's prove it time for Dak. This is if every Cowboys fan, like if you are one of those who honestly believed that Dak is better than Wentz, and you're trying to prove that your argument, this is the time. This is where you're going to say, okay, he doesn't have Zeke, doesn't have a legit running back. Now it's time to carry the team. And if he can't in the next 6 games, you lost your argument. You just did. You can't go against our argument of saying Wentz has shown that he's further along and just a better prospect than Dak. And it's not us trying to say that, hey, we told you so. It's more just like, hey, it's not that we're hating. I'm not trying to hate right now when I tell you that. I'm just being flat out honest and objective on what I see.
No, I agree. And I think I had them with him going 4-2. I had 3-3, but you do have me a little bit swayed on the Chargers game. So I may have them at 2-4 now. So I think it's at least going to be a 1 or 2 game swing, which is huge when you're already behind 2.5 games. That's a big difference, and that's going to be tough for them as far as trying to get any kind of a wild card into the wild card game as well for the first round. So we shall see. I'm very interested to see that. So let's do a quick. Do we want to do the other big trades first in the league and just do a real quick go over with our opinions, or do we want to get into Ajayi first? I think Ajayi, we should save him. You want to do him now?
No, I want to do it now. I think we put him off for quite a while. Let's get talking about it. I'm ready. As you can see, I've got my 36 shirt on, and it might not be for Ajayi. This is Westbrook, my boy Westbrook, who I honestly think that his number should be retired, but it's not. And Ajayi is sporting it, and I'm not going to hate. That just means he's got a lot of pressure on his shoulders from all us Westbrook lovers. So he's got to produce. So let's get into Ajayi.
Well, it was really interesting when they were talking about the numbers that he can pick. I don't know if you saw that article or not. I don't have all the numbers off the top of my head. One might have been like 47 or it was some weird numbers, but maybe one was 30. I don't know. But really the only feasible numbers that he had available, because obviously McLeod has his number. so he can't have 23. The only kind of half decent numbers were, I think, 25 and 36. And unfortunately, as much as we love Westbrook, Shady is your number one leading rusher in franchise history. They will not give that unless somebody beats that number before his number's retired. They're not giving his number out. So,
well, just real quick, because that I hate that narrative. Yes, he's I'm not going to get too into it because I'm going to go on a rant. It's going to take like hours for me to get my point across. But just real quick, if you're one of the ones who automatically say Shady's the best running back in franchise history, you got to look closer, because even though McCoy is technically the leading, has the most rushing yards in franchise history, he doesn't have the most yards from scrimmage. And that's because he ran the ball more when he was here. He got more rushes. Westbrook, though, has more yards. And you got to factor in the fact that Andy Reid passed the ball a lot. So a lot of Westbrook's quote-unquote rushes were screen passes or short passes to him. So he has more rushing yards. Westbrook has more yards altogether. So Shady never eclipsed him in that regard. So
no, and I hear you. But the thing is, he is a running back. Primarily, the expectation is and I know it changed. It's, the narrative of what a running back is a little bit different now. But to be the leading running back in the franchise history of the Philadelphia Eagles is a big deal. Whether you love him, whether you hate him, I'm not saying you specifically, but I think people would have less of a problem if Shady was a little more endearing on his way out the door. But he's a dick, and people love Westbrook, so they're like, if you're going to preserve one number, I think it should go to the guy who's the leading running back in the history of the franchise. So
we agree to disagree. I think there are people on your side. It's not a horrible argument. I mean, it's not something that, like, if you're going to I don't think if at this point you're not going to retire Westbrook's number, I don't think you can retire Shady's number. It's either you do both of them or just none of them. So
I'm going to disagree only on this because I think this is an interesting conversation. If Brian Westbrook would have won a Super Bowl here, I would totally be the other way. But in the end of the day, only one of them has a franchise record. The other one never won a title here. Neither of them won a title here. So I'm going by who left a mark on the franchise.
I think it's thought because you can say who left a bigger mark on the franchise. Well, how many playoff games was Westbrook in, and big plays in the playoffs did Westbrook make?
I know.
So
I don't disagree with that.
It's just a narrative that I think it drives me wild, being the big. I'm like one of the biggest Westbrook fans you're gonna ever meet. So you can say I'm biased, but if you ever want to hear my argument, come find me, and I'll give you plenty of reasons why Westbrook still should be regarded as the best running back in franchise history.
I hear you. I just think that being loved in a city doesn't get your number retired. Breaking records does, and one of them broke a record. Bottom line, winning titles and breaking records. One of those at least, the other did not. So,
well, Westbrook has a scrimmage yards record. That's the thing. That's still a record.
But he also, he's done a lot of stuff.
All right. We agree to disagree. But I guess that was a tangent. We'll get into that some other time.
Yes, it was fun. It's fun to talk about that kind of stuff. But anyway, getting back to it now, obviously, huge move by the Eagles. They go out, they get Ajayi, a fourth-round pick. I know that we were really surprised by this. A lot of people that we interacted with were super surprised by this. Now, but since then, there's been a few things that have come out that he may have been an issue in the locker room, that he may have had some issues with, I guess, what his playing time was. And the issue that he wouldn't take it apparently he did not take it, which to me is here nor there. If he says something to a coach, that coach, it says, whether the player wants him to or not, it's a coach's responsibility to communicate with his head coach. So, but regardless, I digress with that. But that's kind of where it's at. So, a couple people are a little bit worried. I look at it from this end. I see it as, you have a young kid. I understand his frustrations, and I think when a team has underachieved and not been anywhere near what anybody saw them being this year, all the tribulations, all the tough situations that Miami's had to face this year. I think it's been difficult on everybody. It's been stressful. I'm sure he's not the only one that's frustrated. He's probably just the most vocal about it. You got guys like Sue, who's choking. What's his name over there in Baltimore? He's putting his hands on his throat. It's just nonsense. You got. I love Kiko, but Kiko, Jesus, he laid out Joe Flacco. That was insane. Ryan Mallett. Ryan Mallett's the backup quarterback for Baltimore, right?
Yeah, it was Ryan Mallett that Sue was choking out, and
he didn't take his shit either. He just went right up to him. But I look at it, and I'm not saying that we should forgive or overlook something of that nature. But I heard the kid talk today. He's ready to come in and be a part of the team, whatever that means. I think he's ready for the fresh start. Doug went on. Doug talked about how hey, I was on a team. We brought in a guy who was considered a character issue guy with character flaws. And the media made this big thing about it. The team rallied around the guy, and guess what? He was a key contributor to a Super Bowl. So, I believe in Howie. I believe Howie does his homework and understands and knows what's going on. And maybe we are the benefit of a team that was just looking to get rid of what they considered a headache and took way less than what they could have got. I don't care how much of a headache this guy is or not. There's teams out there, especially because he's controllable through next year, that would have, and not only controllable, it's under $700,000 a year for the next 2 years that you have this guy on your roster for, and he's one of the best running backs in football. But I truly do believe they know what they're getting into, and the Eagles looked at it as, hey, one man's problem is another man's gain. This guy fits our team. He's a young guy, same age as our quarterback, that we can fit in with our quarterback. He gives us that, once he learns the playbook, I think he gives us that every down kind of back. How many weeks have we talked about? We've gone back and forth. I believe more in Clement. You believe more in Smallwood. But either way, there's been inconsistencies on it. Now you don't have to worry about that. Now, you know what? If you want to put Clement back on special teams and be a fourth back, you can do that. Smallwood doesn't have to be relied on to be that, every down kind of back to pick up the big yardage now. Now you have a guy who is a downhill runner, but he's fast, breaks tackles, blocks, which this team already has one of the best blocking running backs in football. Now you add another one. They have two monster backs that can help and assist with blocking. I think it's an all-around win. The one thing it does signal to me, I don't see a spot now for Sproles next year, which does kind of bother me. Not bother me, but it's disappointing. And I don't know that you're going to get LeGarrette Blount back next year. I could see them bringing him back if it's a reasonable contract, but I think that, to me, it does signal that those guys, they're all in this year as far as with a guy like Blount, and there will not be a spot next year for Darren Sproles, unfortunately. So I love the move. They gave up nothing to get him. I wouldn't even, if for whatever reason it doesn't work out, I wouldn't even be pissed at Howie for rolling the dice on this one. It was a deal of, if that's put out in front of you, you have to take that deal. You are, if anything, you deserve to have your head ripped off for not even closing that kind of a deal. If it's handed to, which to me, that had to be handed to them. I do know they have a good working relationship. I listened to Howie's press conference as far as, they do those scrimmage games with Miami earlier this year. They had already had Ajayi on their radar as far as, they scout them. And what can these kind of guys bring if we have an opportunity to bring them in? Apparently they loved them then. So I'm a huge fan of this deal. To me, low cost, high reward. Worst case scenario, you let the guy's contract expire and he become a free agent next year or after next year. So, and if it works out, great. You have your franchise running back to go with your franchise quarterback. And we don't have to address it in the draft this year. We don't need to address it in the draft.
It's great. And I've been All over. I've been so angry that I that Howie didn't draft a future running back in this past year's draft because it was one of the deepest running back classes in recent years or for a long time. At least for as long as I've been following football, deepest running back class I've seen. Honestly.
I'm going to be interested to see what happens with Pumphrey now too.
Yes, I think it's very interesting. Even though I think his role would be separate, I still think that he's a different type of running back. I think I'll parlay that later on because you brought up Sproles, and I'll touch on that in a bit. But first, I want to say from what I've seen from Ajayi since last year, whenever I watched him and how I scouted him, was he's first of all he's a big back. He's one of the strongest and most physical backs in the league. That goes without saying. It's you can just see it. He breaks so many tackles. I think from there's a stat PFF put out from last year and this year. He leads the league in among running backs for missed tackles forced, something like that. I forget what the stat says.
I think he's number 1 and Blunt's number 3.
Yeah, exactly. So he's a big physical back, number 1. He's downhill. But the thing is, what you see from him that separates him from most just pure power backs, and it's something that a guy like Samaje Perine from in Washington that I didn't like. And what Ajayi has is great footwork. He played soccer because he's from London. You can kind of hear him when he talks. He still has that London accent. He played soccer, and that footwork shows because he is when he gets through the hole or when he's at the line of scrimmage waiting for the hole to appear. His footwork is on point. So he can make moves with his excellent footwork, and his feet just constantly are in the right position to make cuts. And not only that, but he has really good bursts through the hole. His top end speed isn't great, but it's good. It's pretty good. It's good enough to pull away from linebackers at the second level, and he's shown it because he's had plenty of long runs last year. So he has adequate speed. But what gets him to that second level is that really, really good burst and acceleration. It comes out of nowhere almost, and he just plows through. And then he runs. He doesn't run upright. He runs behind his pads with a good shoulder lean, and that's what attributes to his power and why he's able to break through a lot of tackles. So this is one guy on a skill level. Like if I'm comparing skill level and not style of play, just where he's at, I wouldn't say he's an elite talent. I don't think he's up there with like the Todd Gurley's or Ezekiel Elliott's of the world, but I think he's right under there. I think he's on the same kind of level as like a Melvin Gordon, that talent level.
Yeah, I mean, I don't put him top 5, but I would put him easily top 10, maybe even top 8.
Yes, I agree. That's exactly what
He's probably somewhere between 6 to 8 or 6 to 10.
Yes, and that's more than enough for us. And the fact that
especially in this league, that's huge. To me, that's having a superstar running back. If you're in top 10, you have a top 10 running back, you have a superstar running back. Guy can run 12 or 1,300 yards. It's a superstar running back.
Yeah, so it's great that we have him. And one thing that he's keep something over words. He does rank 19th out of 44 running backs in pass protection. 19th isn't great, but it's a lot better than what our running backs were doing. The next best running back that we had was Blunt at 33. And even though he has had a career of being a good pass blocker, he struggled this year. Maybe that's because of age and everything, but he automatically comes in here and improves our pass blocking from that running back group. And that's pivotal because of Peter's injury. Peter's injured, so Big V you have to help out Big V on the left side. And they did. Against the Niners, they put a lot of jumbo packages or tight ends or an extra lineman, say Malu, coming in on this side, that on Big V's side to help out. But the running backs just weren't helping at all. Smallwood has improved and shown flashes, but his atrocities come out and rear their ugly head way too often. Like this whole idea that Smallwood is a good pass blocker, I forget who said it. someone on one of the broadcasts said it. I think it was John Gruden, and I wanted to throw my chair at the screen because that is not true. Smallwood is not a good pass blocker. He's not. So that is huge that Ajayi comes in and he's shown that he's not only improved, but now he's a adequate pass blocker. So that's huge. And another thing, Miami didn't use him this way. They didn't. But in college in Boise State, Ajayi was the type of running back who was split out wide and caught passes. So he has that ability. And he did say in his press conference that in this past offseason, that's something that he did work on also in addition to his pass blocking. So he's been working on being a receiver, not only out of the backfield, but split out wide. I think that if he shows the coaches during practices that it's a skill set that just was never used correctly in Miami, you can start to see Ajayi being used that way. And that's going to be great for this offense because that's the type of all-around skill set that this offense needs. The question mark I have about him, there's two. His instincts and decision to kind of go for the big play way too often kind of hurts him and kind of shows why he's a little too inconsistent. It's because like sometimes he doesn't take exactly what's there. So he's got to fix that, which I think is definitely fixable. But that is one concern, and the bigger concern are his knees. He does go. The reason he was a second round talent, but he fell to the fifth round because people were worried about his degenerative knee issues. That I think has gone a little overstated now. There was the report that Miami wanted to report that was the reason why they dealt him. But of course, that's just Miami doing damage control with the fan base. Ajayi has been healthy. Now, I think that could be an issue long term later in his career. Could he flame out a little sooner than most running backs? Yeah, it's possibly. Maybe like 27, 28. That's when you're going to start to see Ajayi kind of slow down. But at 24, he has more than enough tread on his tires. His knees, I don't think you should worry about anything with his knees right now. He's completely fine. And this for fourth round pick, we used a fourth round pick to get a feature back that's proven instead of using that pick next year. We're good. It's such a great move. I do not see I see such a small risk behind this. There is a risk, but it's so small. And you have, like you said, you have to make this move. So great move by Howie. Howie here again. Like I am so happy. I wrote on one of my blog posts. I wrote after week 2, the loss against the Chiefs, where we only had 13 carries. I wrote a blog post about the state of the Eagles running backs and where has it gone and like what's happened to it, because we've been so used to a good running back lineage dating back, starting with Deuce Staley, going right into Westbrook and going right into McCoy.
Even before him, guys like Wilbert Montgomery.
Yeah, we have a great history with running backs, and over the past couple of years, that's gone out the window. Who is going to be the next franchise running back?
Montgomery, Ricky Waters. I mean, we had a lot of great running backs.
We did. So
Ricky Waters, maybe you don't call him great, but he was a really good running back in this franchise. Wilbert Montgomery was one of the best running backs in the history of the franchise, and he was he was a good back in his time. I agree with you. It's very different. And I believe in Howie. Howie does his homework. He specifically addressed health concerns. He said, listen, we performed our physical. We do a very thorough physical, and everything that came out of that as far as regarding his knees or any other issues physically with him, we are more than encouraged with everything, and we don't foresee that being an issue. I'm with you. Guy's 24 years old. Could it be something that he can have an issue occasionally, maybe a nag every now and then? Sure. But, you surround him with good other backs that you can take the load off his back, like a LeGarrette Blount. You have other guys here that if his knees are barking a little bit, you can hold him back. And obviously we've proven that we can go stretches with just these 3 running backs aside from Ajayi. Ajayi is just a huge bonus to add on top. I love the deal. You had to go out and you had to get this deal done. As far as the big home run play, I watched Shady McCoy do it every game his entire career with the Philadelphia Eagles. So it is what it is. I'm used to saying it. If he can do it, awesome. Because, as much as Shady did it, which was every play, he did have the home run plays. That's something that, aside from watching Beast Mode earlier this year, We really haven't seen a lot of that. So you know what? I'm okay with having him take a few big shots at trying to create, a big play. And you know what? He's probably hungry for it, considering he doesn't have a rushing touchdown this year because Miami's terrible. And I also believe some of your concerns with him is going to be self-addressed without him even having to do anything because he has a much better offensive line to run behind, and a much better quarterback who can, hide the ball when they're doing handoffs, fake handoffs, create deception, a guy who can create plays with his feet if they do anything where he's going to, swing out and bootleg or whatever he's going to do, and Ajayi can catch the football and run and then create a big play that way. I think they're going to have plenty of those opportunities.
I think that you hit the nail on the coffin. I was going to get into that. I had a friend, I won't say his name, but you know who you are if you're listening to this, who questioned this and said it's not a huge upgrade at running back for us. And I adamantly disagree with that. I already touched on his skill set, Ajayi's skill set, but let's look at the situation. I got into an argument with him about the Eagles O-line. He says the Eagles don't have a top O-line. I don't know what he's been watching, but we do. It's not. Do I think it's the best? No, especially without Peters. I don't think it's the best O-line in the league, but I would say right now it's playing like a top 5 unit in the league. And I think if you go ask a lot of people in the football world, a lot of analysts and experts, they'd say the same thing. But regardless, even if you don't see that, if you don't think they're a top unit right now, they are drastic. That O-line is a drastic improvement from Miami's O-line. Miami's O-line could be like a bottom 5 O-line in the league. They're horrible. So that's one. Our O-line is a drastic improvement. And two, our quarterback situation is a drastic improvement. So not only our defenses, they can't – Ajayi was the best weapon Miami had. Okay, outside of Jarvis Landry. No, actually, I'd say talent-wise, Ajayi is a bigger threat talent-wise than Jarvis Landry. So defenses aren't going to key on –
Or Devontae Parker. They had a lot of weapons on that team.
They do. And I'm saying they're bad. I'm saying the best weapon on Miami's offense is Ajayi. So the main focus of any opposing defense going in was going to be Ajayi and stopping him. So you go into – now Ajayi comes into here in Philadelphia – and he has Carson Wentz and this high-flying offense. What? The defense is going to key on Ajayi now that he's here? No, they're going to still key on Zach Ertz, Nelson Aguilar, and Carson Wentz. That's going to be the key for any defense coming in. They're going to focus on them, not Ajayi. So he's not going to face all these stacked boxes that he's faced. So that immediately improves the running game. I really, really don't see how you can have a concern about Ajayi coming in and saying, oh, but his numbers aren't there this year. He hasn't scored a touchdown. His rushing average is bad. So you can't say that talent-wise, he's much better. Well, yeah, we can, because you got to look at circumstance and you got to watch the tape. Like LeGarrette Blount, I will admit right now, I was wrong about LeGarrette Blount coming into the season. I thought he was just going to be a short yardage back. He's shown to be a much more than that. He's been really good, really great for us on and off the field. I'm not debating that. But even with how good LeGarrette Blount has been, you cannot say that he's on the same level as Ajayi. He's just not. And age, yes, has something to do with that. But we're talking about right now, Ajayi does come in and improve the running game. And if you debate that, if you're saying that he doesn't, I don't know what you're watching.
Yeah, no, I agree with you. So obviously this is going to be something that we're going to keep our eyes on. Really intrigued to see. They said that obviously LeGarrette Blount's going to continue to start. Why mess with success? I'm okay with that. I agree with that. Let him start. Does not mean that he's not going to get his touches, especially after this first or second week. You might see a little bit more once we hit Dallas after the bye week. But I'm interested and I'm very excited to see what we have here. And I'm hoping that this works out. So what I think we would like to do.
And real quick, just to end the conversation, I did research today, and I broke down the amount of running plays because we're talking about how the Eagles are going to split carries up between Blount and Ajayi, and I did research and I looked into how many running plays and the percentage of running plays the Eagles called throughout each week, and so far at 5 out of our 8 games, we've run the ball with our running backs at least 25 or more times. So most of the games that we're having, we are carrying the ball 25 or more times. And I think that's perfectly fine. If you can have 25 plus carries out of your running backs and you're splitting that where you're giving, you know, 10 to Blunt and 15 to Ajayi, that's fine. That's perfect. You know, give or take a few carries. I'm just, I'm not giving an exact number. I'm just saying roundabout. If we have at least 25 carries, which we've had 5 out of our 8 games, that's a balanced attack. That's a balanced attack that I think Blunt and Ajayi are going to be more than happy to get. And Blunt has already said before, he doesn't care what his role is in this offense. He just wants to help be part of a winning team. So I don't think, you're going to see, for one, the coach has said they're not going to have Blunt's carries diminish. He's going to still get his 10 to 12 carries. But I still think that even with that, all the rest of the carries are going to go to Ajayi, and you can pretty much say goodbye to Smallwood and Clement as running game contributors. It's going to be Ajayi and Blunt. And when it comes to Pumphrey and Sproles, we'll see what happens. I think that there's still a possible chance that Sproles still does come back. I think he still can have a role as that pass catching back that gets moved around the formation, even with Ajayi there. I still don't see Blunt coming back, so I think the Sproles could have a role. I think Pumphrey is still going to be groomed to take Sproles' place, but patience could be a little thinner now with Ajayi here. So, I mean, we'll see.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting to see. So I think what we'll transition to, we're just going to mention a couple of the big deals. There was really 3 big trades that happened. There's only one that I really have an opinion on. Well, 2. First one, we're going to go Dwayne Brown to the Seahawks. The Seahawks was the team that I said scared me the most in the NFC. If a team's going to make a run and give the Eagles trouble, I thought that they would be the most. And I think that this is a huge upgrade for them on offensive line. I think that this will give even that little bit more protection for Russell Wilson to be able to create more plays. So for me, win-win for them. What do you think about that one?
That's the big one, because I think that Seahawks, and I mentioned it weeks ago when we were talking about our biggest threats in the NFC, the Seahawks were one of the teams that worried me because of experience. Russell Wilson's a magician, and that team just knows how to win. They proved it. Experienced playoff team, Super Bowl champions. Now they get the biggest issue was their offensive line, but now they get Dwayne Brown, and if he's everything that he's advertised to be, that's huge, because now Russell Wilson's not running for his life every single play. And so one player on the offensive line can make such a big difference. I think that with that move, definitely the Seahawks are, I think, the biggest threat to the Eagles right now and going forward in the playoffs. They're the number one team I worry about. After them, it would have to be the Saints. So that's a huge move for the Seahawks, and we shall see. And we'll get into it when on our radio show when we get closer to that week. But I already had the Seahawks beating us in Seattle in our game against them, and now I'm even more confident in that being a loss, and it's nothing against the Eagles. Again, it's not like I like picking against them. It's just that it's on the road in Seattle, and I think Seattle's starting to gain momentum. That win against the Texans was a huge win. That was a great game, but that was a huge win for the Seahawks to pull that one out. They're going to start to get on a roll here, I think, and with Dwayne Brown, that their offense is going to be much improved, and Russell Wilson's going to put up even better numbers.
Yeah. No, I agree with you, and obviously we'll dig into that, especially once we have a little more substance to see how the effect takes place when we get closer to Seattle. We can get into that a little more. I'm going to save the one I just want to throw my opinion out. I'm going to save that one for last. So let's go Kelvin Benjamin to the Bills. To me, they traded Sammy Watkins, and now they went out and got another guy who can possibly be a home run hitter. It is what it is. I don't know why Carolina moved him. I mean, I haven't read on it. I don't know if he had any issues with anything in Carolina, but I was a little bit intrigued why this deal happened, but maybe you have a little more insight than I do, because I was confused by this move for Carolina.
Sorry, if you hear the dogs barking, they're kind of barking. But I honestly I don't know. I really haven't looked much into it. I don't know why Carolina traded him. Maybe because they already have Funches there, so that's possible. But it's I don't at the same time I don't know why. I don't know what the Bills are doing. I know that people are saying, "Oh, they traded away Watkins before because they wanted to rebuild, but the team is now successful, so they need to build on the success they're having this season. They need a wide receiver because they have none." I can kind of understand that, but it's kind of like you're backtracking on your plan, and I don't think that's good. If you're going to rebuild, go all in. Like if you're going to trade for picks, go all in on that. And but then now they give. I mean, it's not significant, like overly significant. They gave about a third and seventh, I think, for Benjamin. But at the same time, don't tell me Benjamin's on the same level as Watkins. He's not. I think Benjamin is one of those wide receivers that is definitely overrated. He's one of the least athletic wide receivers there is.
I like Benjamin.
He has a role. I think his role is more of a good number two. He's a go up and get it guy. He's a red zone threat, but I don't think he's one that is. I don't think he's good at route running for one, so I don't think he can create much separation. At his size, you might not need separation, but at the same time, he's shown issues with drops as well, and he's not fast. He gained weight this offseason, so I don't see that. I can kind of understand it, but at the same time, I think it's a bad move by the Bills, and so I'm not a big fan of this move for them.
Wait. For me, I'm not even looking at it from like the Bills' perspective. I'm looking at it more from Carolina's perspective. I don't think it's a bad move for the Bills. I do agree with you. It kind of goes back on why did you trade Sammy Watkins? That it makes no sense to me. But I feel like for a team that is still competing for a playoff spot and one of your biggest targets, Greg Olsen, is out. I don't care if just because we have Funches there. Like, you need every weapon you can have. And I think that I just didn't understand, like, whether you love him or hate him, the guy still creates plays. And I think that they needed him in Carolina. That's why I was kind of thrown off. Like, I could see why Buffalo would make the move, whether you agree with it or disagree with it. That's, neither here nor there, but you can understand the move. I didn't understand it from Carolina's perspective to give him up. I mean, they did get a nice return for him, a third and a seventh round pick. But, I mean, unless they're content I don't think they're a team that would wave the white flag already, but it just didn't make any sense to me. So, I mean, it is what it is. I'll be interested to see how that pans out for both teams. The one I want to talk about, and I don't need to get deep into it, but I'm going to give you my opinion, is the Jimmy Garoppolo to the 49ers move. To me, there is a lot of indications by this move happening. I guess maybe, everybody had it as a lock deal, us included, that Kirk Cousins was going there. That seems to now be out of the question. So that's going to leave for an interesting offseason of where does he end up at? Because that was a logical landing spot for him. I don't know if maybe they weren't confident that they could land him, or if they just weren't willing to wait it out, or maybe they love Garoppolo enough. I thought that was really great. The other thing that I find interesting, and I'm going to be honest, I can't remember the source that brought it up. It actually might have been our boy Colin Coward, because I was watching him for about 10 minutes, and I actually agree with his assessment, and it's the indication that Bill and Tom are going out together. To me, this is the clear sign. There's no Tom goes out, Bill sticks around. He's got Garoppolo in place. I think for them now, it's very evident, and in my opinion, maybe almost selfish to see that, all right, we're going to go all in. We're going to get whatever we, draft picks. But they might, they trade draft picks and go out and get guys in the offseason. That's typically their MO. But to me, it was like that is supposed to be your future quarterback that they believed in. And I believe in him. I think Garoppolo is going to be a good NFL quarterback. I thought he probably would have been a great fit to move in after Tom. He's been there for a while now at this point, learning behind him. He has taken snaps. I mean, he only played a game and a half, but, he's taken a lot of snaps and reps in the system. I'm just really, to me, I agree. I agree with Colin Cowherd. I can't believe I'm saying it because he's an asshole. But to me, this is an indication that whenever Tom calls it quits, whether it's 2 years, 3 years, whatever it is at 45, what's he, 41, 42 now? I think Bill rides off in the sunset with him. And God knows what they're going to leave behind in that franchise at this point, because you just took your quarterback of the future away. And they don't even have another quarterback on the roster. I think they were going to take Hoyer back.
They signed Hoyer officially.
Right. So they were going to take him back, but by taking him, they would have had to have picked up his option, I think, or next year. And they didn't want to have to commit to that for next year. So they waited so he could be cut, then just signed him. But the original deal in place, from what if I recall reading, had Hoyer as part of the deal. But it was his option for next year that took him out of it. But I just found it really interesting. I found it interesting to see now that, this alleged quarterback of the future is no longer the quarterback of the future. There is no backup plan for Tom Brady. And it's very evident to me that Coach Bill, the guru, the czar, he's packing his bags and he's heading out of town whenever Captain Tom decides it's time to call it a day. So, maybe we are finally seeing the wind down of the insane, and as much as I hate them, incredible run and dynasty of the Patriots. So maybe it's time to actually just really kind of appreciate the last few years of it left as a football person. What do you think?
Sorry, I couldn't get my thing off mute. Yeah, I agree with you. I'm going to say I agree with you and not Coward, just so I don't have to say I agree with him.
Well, I will say I went a little more in depth than what he said. He really just there was one or two things I threw in that he said. The rest I kind of threw in there, but
well, then good. I agree with you. I'm full on board with your opinion. I think I didn't think of that, so that's a great thinking on your end. It just makes too much sense. They pretty much started this dynasty together. They're going to end it together. So there's not much I can add to that. You pretty much said it all when it comes to that. What I will input, because as I've said, I do like the Niners. I've liked them since I was a kid. So I was really like surprised and pleased with this move for them. We haven't seen much of Garoppolo. We don't know what exactly he can be. There were instances of Matt Castle who looked great before, and then look what he turned out to be. So it's tough to kind of get a full assessment of Garoppolo. But the thing is,
I think Jimmy's a little bit better quarterback than he is, though.
Yeah, he definitely is. Like, from what we've seen, yeah, I think Garoppolo, you can tell he has talent to be one of the better quarterbacks in the league.
Yeah, and I definitely think, just from hearing them talk about over the time, since he's essentially been on the team, that they looked at this guy as the successor of Tom. Like, they were the Patriots, the organization was so high on this guy, even more so than guys like Ryan Mallett, who, they talked about and they liked Ryan Mallett, guys like Matt Castle. Like, to me, they made it apparent that this guy was supposed to be the successor to Tom. And very unexpectedly, plans changed. So,
yeah, I mean, you have a great point. So, I'm not gonna, we'll see. I think Garoppolo, though, was a risk worth taking. We talked about Cousins going there, and then them signing Barkley, or not signing, sorry, drafting Barkley potentially in the this year, and that would be such good building blocks for their offense. Well, now you have your quarterback. You have someone you can go forward with now, and in the draft, you don't have to worry about Sam Darnold coming out, because there was a report that Darnold might not come out if the Browns have the number 1 pick. So you don't have to worry about him coming out if you're looking for a quarterback. You don't have to worry about signing Kirk Cousins away from the Redskins. You have him. You have your quarterback. Now you go into the draft, you look for O-line, because they need O-line help, like all across the board. You draft O-line, you draft a running back like Barkley, which I'm telling you, I really want them to do, and you keep adding pieces to your already promising defense, that I am really excited for the Niners. I think they're building something there that could be really good as soon as next year. So great move by them. I'm happy for Niners fans. I have a friend who's a Niners fan, and I'm really happy for him. And I'm looking forward to seeing what they're going to do from here on out.
Yeah, and I think, and by no means am I putting him, by mentioning this comparison, but by no means am I putting him in the class of an Aaron Rodgers. But, we've seen this before with a quarterback who doesn't know when it's time. I'm not saying it's Tom's time yet, but, this guy's still talking about, I want to play till I'm 45. I think he's got another year, maybe 2. I already think you're starting to see the chinks in the armor. As great as he is still, that just shows you how great he has been. I think you're starting to see the, not downfall, but the very slight decline of Tom. We sat and there was another great quarterback that was in Green Bay that the quarterback of the future sat behind him for years. And at least that team finally knew when it was time to move on. I love Mr. Kraft's confidence, the owner of the Patriots, Robert Kraft. I love his confidence in Bill and the decisions for the organization, but I think this was a decision where I think the owner should have stepped in, and I don't think he used his brain as far as, where are we going to be after Tom and Bill go. I don't think there's going to any great quarterback classes coming out of college that I'm aware of in the next couple of years. So what is plan B? What is plan A when the time comes and Tom's gone? I don't think that Robert Kraft really thought that through and put all his faith in Bill and said, God, Bill, you have the reins, do what you want to do. And I think that this is going to be something that if Garoppolo is what I think he's going to be, because I do believe in the faith that someone like Bill had in this guy, and he ends up flourishing in San Francisco, that was a chance for them to continue rolling along, and I don't think it's going to happen. So, I'm not putting him in Aaron Rodgers' class, but it reminds me of a kid who an organization was so high on, and obviously Aaron Rodgers was a very highly touted, quarterback coming out of the draft who amazingly fell in the draft. But it just reminds me of, this is supposed to be our quarterback of the future. Can you imagine if Rodgers would have played a year or two earlier, the numbers he'd have in his career? I think he sat a year or two way too long behind Brett Favre. So we'll see how it plays out. It's going to be very interesting in New England. I'm going to be a little more attentive to them just because I really do truly believe that this is the time where the dynasty winds down and somebody else steps in, or multiple teams, which I'm okay with because I get sick of seeing the same teams every year. I'm happy with the passing of the torch, and let's let some new blood get in there. Last thing, draft or trade deadline wise, I have to mention, we cannot go without mentioning this. The Cleveland Browns.
What?
How?
What?
How is this even possible that a team could be this cursed? Like, I truly do believe this is a cursed organization. Like, it is not possible for these things. Just the last 2 years, Deshaun Watson. Well, this year, Carson Wentz. They're not their type of quarterbacks. Okay, cool. But Johnny Manziel was. Now they go out and they make a trade. Who did they trade? Was it McCarron?
They were trying to get A.J. McCarron.
A.J. McCarron. They were so happy with Cincinnati that they made this deal. This is a true story, guys. This is not an exaggeration. This is not me putting my heel chrome or any chrome spin on it. This organization, when they made this deal, they were so happy, high-fiving, hugging, and congratulating each other.
For A.J. McCarron, by the way. A.J. McCarron.
Yes,
Why?
for A.J. McCarron. That the organization went The Cincinnati Bengals at 3:55 p.m. when the trade deadline was at 4 p.m. sharp, put the call in and reported their end of this deal. Cleveland was so happy that this deal happened that they didn't put their call in until 4:05 p.m. because they were congratulating each other. And the league said, well, it had to be in by 4, so you're screwed. We're rejecting it. And then they tried to file a complaint to have a formal protest, which was then declined immediately by the league. But like only Cleveland, like this year, just in the game, Cleveland iced the kicker on the first kick. He misses the kick, comes back, makes the kick. Cleveland loses the football game. Like, if I was a Cleveland fan, and I am a very loyal sports fan to my teams. I've been a Cardinals fan my entire life. I've been an Eagles fan almost my entire life, but I still have an allegiance to the Dolphins. I've been a Sixers fan since I started watching basketball. Always been a Flyers fan. I have had season tickets to the Sixers when it was like watching a bunch of turds with a uniform running around on the court, because the whole conglomerate of everything put there was just shit. It was a shit product they put on there. I was a fan of the Sixers then, and I never wavered, and I loved them. If I was a fan of the Cleveland Browns, I would have given up on this team long ago, and I have no problem saying that there would have been no loyalty to this team whatsoever, because you just like that kind of stress as a fan. To me, is something that would totally affect my personal life. We're not talking about I'm pissed off on Sunday, I go back to work Monday, I get over it. Like, I would hate my life as a fan. I would probably hate the sport of football if I was a Cleveland Browns fan. I don't know how anybody can be a fan, including them in Cleveland. Ever since they moved to Baltimore, let's be realistic, that was the Cleveland Browns. What this is now is a mockery and a joke. They take the history of the Browns from before, but that history is with Baltimore. This team is a disgrace. The organization is a disgrace. It's an embarrassment. They are literally a walking punchline. And if there's ever a time for retraction or to move a team to Vegas, this is the team that needed to go to Vegas. They need to get out of Cleveland. They need a new name, just a whole new vibe. They need a whole new front office and regime. They need to blow it all up. Build it from the bottom with people who know what they're doing. This was the most amazing thing I've heard, and I can't tell you how happy this whole thing was. It went down, and then I read this story, how happy this actually made me. I feel like at this point, if they're going to keep them in the league, I want to see these things continue to happen to Cleveland. It's part of the character of their organization, and it's part of now the character of the NFL. It's all like, oh, only the Cleveland Browns, it's almost part of the fabric of the league now for the Cleveland Browns to be a joke. And I absolutely love it. Charles, what'd you think?
I'm still in disbelief. Like when you talk about
I believe it. I totally believe it's Cleveland. I believe
I'm in disbelief that it's so believable. It's if you hear that, that's my mom's cell phone ringing. But I'm practically speechless because you can't make this stuff up. I remember 2 years ago, I was listening when I was on my phase of listening to The Fanatic that Jason Martinez or something, I think that's the producer's name. He was saying how the Eagles franchise is just as bad as the Cleveland franchise. And I flipped out because that is not true because of stuff like this. There's no team in the league that has embarrassing storylines as like the Cleveland Browns.
There is no team in professional sports.
Yes. Like
with this track record.
Remember last year when I think it was the Thursday night game against the Ravens where the Browns were they were about to win it in a field goal, but then it was like with like only a few seconds left, the Browns were about to win it, kick a field goal. It wasn't a long field goal, it was a short field goal. It gets I don't know.
Okay.
Yeah.
Look them away.
Sorry, my mom. um, so they get the Ravens block it, and they return it for a touchdown as time expires in the game. Like, like, stuff like that.
And the best part about it is it's the Ravens that did that. It's their own organization against them.
Yes, and then of course you have the whole thing with Carson Wentz. They didn't see Carson Wentz as a top talent. Okay, sure. I can't. It's no one will ever be as bad as the Browns, and it's stuff like this. This is just something that you just look at them not getting the trade done, and regardless if you think it worked out better on their end, passing up on AJ McCarron, having it fall through, that's not the point. Something as simple as getting the trade submitted to the league office,
making a phone call.
How? So when it comes to the Browns, I'm just speechless because you can't make this stuff up. And yeah.
And let me just say in regards to that, since we did bring up Carson Wentz, if you guys, and I've talked about it in the group, but I'll say it again, because things like this with Cleveland and now seeing what happened with them too with Deshaun Watson, it's just kind of an emphasis. I always know, and you always said, hey, build the team around the quarterback, go get the quarterback, yada, yada, yada. We've all heard that 1,000 times, but I will say it now. I don't care how many draft picks you have. If you have a chance to go up and get your franchise quarterback, you go up, you trade him. If you got to trade your first round and your second round to get him, at that time, if you remember, I wasn't real happy with how many draft picks or the level that we had to give up. But I will say this, and now I value this because I'm not a Cleveland Browns fan. If you have a chance to go get your franchise quarterback, and I will have faith in my organization going forward that they will go out and get my franchise quarterback. Cleveland, not so much. The only surprise in the history of the NFL that doesn't surprise me that it wasn't Cleveland was back when Minnesota skipped their draft picks a number of times because they didn't make their pick. That's about the only thing in the history of the NFL bad that I've ever seen that I'm shocked never happened to Cleveland. But I had to bring it up, maybe even to the sacrifice of this week's game. We don't have to break down this week too much. Just give me, we know it's going to be a tough game. We're playing a tough we got Denver this week, by the way. Let me mention who we're playing. We played Denver this week in a tough game. You even notated it's offense versus defense. We know we're going to be in a battle. I think this is a week that if Jai gets some reps, we can see kind of where that blocking is going to come into play. I'm just gonna say I still think the Eagles win this game. I got the Eagles at 24-16. What do you got? And then Osweiler, I think, is starting, correct?
Yes, Osweiler is starting. So
yeah,
regardless if it was Osweiler or Lynch, I think he's still hurt. That's still great for the Eagles because they're all incompetent quarterbacks. Because I know we're running long on time, I'm not going to get too much into it, but pretty much when it comes down to the Broncos offense, like their trio of running backs are pretty good. The thing is, their offensive line is not. They have a good right guard running Larry from the Cowboys that they signed, but besides him, everyone's kind of been struggling. So that O line can be exposed. Our defensive line, especially on the edges, can really get to them, and that's the reason why the running backs haven't done too well, even though they're talented. Emmanuel Sanders might play. I think he practiced, so it looks like he's going to play, but he might not be 100%. Him and Demaryius Thomas, they're good wide receivers, but it doesn't mean anything if you don't have the quarterback good enough to throw to them. When it comes to the Broncos defense, we all know second best run defense behind us in the whole league. Their pass rush is elite. Their defensive line is decent, but their linebacking core and corners are where they're really among the best in the league. Even their corners, on the outside and in the slot, really, really good. Linebackers, really, really good. Shane Ray came back last week. He's a fast linebacker on the edge. So that was, their linebackers and corners are going to be an issue. But their safeties, they're okay, but they can be exposed. I think that's where we're going to attack them, and that's part of the reason why they have trouble defending tight ends, because they bring down their safety, Darian Stewart, and sometimes the other guy, I forget his name, but it's mostly Darian Stewart who comes down and covers the tight end. And even though they're confident in him to do it, and that's why they still put him on there, he's not the best in coverage one-on-one. So I think this will be a Zach Ertz game all day.
Well, I was going to say, too, I think Ertz and Aguilar are going to be huge in this game because Aguilar can go across the field and cover the slot. Ertz is going to be able to create some space, too, in running in the middle of the field. So, and if they're successful there, then maybe that opens up the outside for the big play.
Yeah, and I agree. So it's going to be huge for them. Don't expect huge numbers from Torrey Smith, Matt Collins, or Alshon Jeffrey. They're going to be locked down, and it's just because the corners are that good. My player spotlight. Oh wait, when it comes to Ajayi, I think they're going to bring him along a little bit. Maybe you see a few snaps. I think you see him there mainly to pass block, like you said. I think if they're going to bring him in there, they want him to pass block. But if he doesn't have a full understanding of the playbook yet, that could be an issue because he might not know who to pick up. So we'll see. I wouldn't expect anything big from Ajayi. I think, again, in a few weeks when we play the Cowboys, that's when you will start to see him in the full rotation. I still think the main guy here for this week will be Blunt. He'll get majority of the carries, but I don't think our running game is going to be that effective. And that's not anything breaking news. My player spotlight is going to be on Brandon Graham. I think he's going to wreak havoc on that Broncos online. He's going to really get in the face of Osweiler and going to be an issue all game. I think he's the one person I think is going to have a big game. My prediction, I think it's going to be a low-scoring game. These are two defenses who are among the best in the league, and I think that the Eagles still are the more well-rounded team. That Broncos offense is just really bad because of the quarterback and their offensive line. So my prediction for the score is going to be 17-7. You're muted.
Yeah. No, I think obviously I agree with you. Our offense and their defense is going to be a very evenly matched matchup. We're going to have to figure out a way to put some points on the board. I think that we will, though. I'm confident that we're going to be able to control the middle of the field. I think where you had kind of already stated the big imbalance there is going to be our defense versus their offense. They're having quarterback issues. They had to go and get Brock Osweiler. They're kind of retreading old territory, trying to find an answer because Simeon or Seaman, whatever his name is, he's kind of out now at this point, pun intended. So, one thing I'll say, it's an opportunity for Osweiler to show that, this should have been his team. He can come back and he can take over the team. But with that said, you're right. Their offense is just not in a great state. I don't think it's a good matchup for our defense. And I think that our special teams are going to play a big role in this game too. So, when you have an even matchup on the field, you exploit where the mismatches are. And then obviously for us, we're going to have to control their offense and keep them off the board, which I don't think will be a huge thing. I'm going to stick to my score, though. I think both teams are going to figure out ways to put points on the board. I could see them getting a garbage TD, which is why I have it more of like them scoring like 17 or 16 in that round. They'll get some field goals and probably a garbage TD down the stretch. I don't know that I see them getting in the end zone unless somehow they get a big play, but I think our secondary will be able to control, their wide receiver core. So with that, Charles, you want to promote your social media?
So as usual, follow me on Twitter. It's Chucks Maranan, CHUXMARANAN, and follow my blog. I think I'm gonna have an entry coming up next week. There's thoughts brewing in my head I was thinking about, so I'm probably going to get ready to write a new post next week. But keep up with it. It's chucksmaranan.blogspot.com. So, yeah.
Cool. Yeah, and for me, you can find me on Twitter and Instagram at HeelChrome. I am on Snapchat. If you watch my Snapchat today, I just spent my entire day at work scaring people. So you can find me. That one is at Chrome Movement. And again, you can find us on Twitter at BOAF1933. We are on Facebook as well. We're going to start opening that up to let a few more people in, try to get a little more interaction going, especially because we're going to be, as we stated, we're going to be hitting A2D Radio next week for another appearance before we officially start. Again, tentatively, our start date is November 14th on A2D Radio. Until then, we have one more show here, guaranteed. Again, barring any setbacks, I think the next one will be our last show here on YouTube. And again, we'll keep the YouTube page up. Maybe we'll post some videos, whether it be of ourselves or them or what have you. So, so that's where we're at. So, with that, we thank you guys again for listening. We're really excited about, all the changes that the Eagles have made this week. The huge move with Ajayi. Howie Hero, my man, hashtag way to go, brother. You killed it. Fly, Eagles, fly. Charles, enjoy the game this week. Maybe we'll watch together. And that being said, guys, thanks for checking us out again. Rate, subscribe, comment, all the good stuff, and we'll smell you later.